Hi again, everyone. Gary Digital Williams here on Boxing Along the Beltway, our news and notes for this week. And we have a whole lot of news this week. A lot of things have been going on over the past week and going into February, into March, and into April, too, to be perfectly honest with you. But a lot of things going on. Got some updated news, and we have some new news, actually, that we have for you. And also, I want to end this podcast by putting my wrestling hat, as I do on occasion on these podcasts, and pay tribute to one of the great tag teams in all professional wrestling history who finally received their just due this week. And I'll talk more about that near the close of this podcast. Of course, Boxing on the Beltway news and notes brought to you by Real-Time Pain Relief. From boxers to ballerinas, from shoulder pain to muscle strain and everything in between, Boxing Along the Beltway recommends Real-Time Pain Relief, the natural, plant-based, safe, fast, and effective ointment. And, of course, you go to www.freepainoffer.com and you buy $10 worth of Real-Time Pain Relief, you get a free $10 tube of Real-Time Pain Relief. Rub it on, the pain is gone in real time. Well, we have some good news for the amateurs this week and this past weekend, as a number of boxers, I think around 20, close to 25 Beltway boxers traveled to the 2017 National Silver Glove Championship, celebrated their 50th anniversary this year, by the way, and that's in Independence, Missouri. And local boxers brought home 8 national titles. So congratulations to the likes of Jamal Harvey out of Oxon Hill Boxing Club. We have Richard Dodson. He's out of the Untouchables Boxing Gym at Keystone Boxing in Fort Washington, Maryland. Marcus Luther's out of the Headbangers Gym in D.C. Tariq Superman Williams out of Next Up Boxing in the D.C. area. Benjamin Johnson out of No Excuse Boxing in Capitol Heights. Dante White from Upton Boxing in Baltimore, Maryland. Travis Best is from the Triple Threat Gym, and not sure what Triple Threat is. No, I do know where it is. It's in Lanham. This is Andrew Council's new gym. Andrew Council is the former middleweight contender, is the head of that gym, and Best won a Silver Gloves regional championship as well, and he was I believe he was an unopposed champion at the Nationals. And also BJ Santana Brown, he's out of the Time to Grind gym out of Baltimore, Maryland. That's Mac Allison's gym. And so we had outstanding work this year. And again, these are the guys that when they get to be open in a few years, might be the next wave to bring us some championships in events just like the Golden Gloves. And speaking of the Golden Gloves, they will start in the next couple of weeks at Sugar Ray Leonard Boxing Gym in Palm Park, Maryland. And Warren Marshall and I will do our best to cover everything that goes on with the Golden Gloves. And it might be a little tougher this year because February is packed. I'm telling you, February is packed. Of course, we have we're on the air this coming Saturday, February 11th, from Rosecroft Raceway in Fort Washington, Maryland, for the King's Promotions card. We went over that card last week. No real changes to the card at all, so I think the card is pretty much set. They're still looking for an opponent for Malik Jackson, but other than that, the card is pretty much set. So that's Saturday, February 11th, and we'll be on the air live from Rosecroft Raceway in Fort Washington, Maryland, as soon as I get over there from Coppin State University. Of course, we have homecoming at Coppin State against Bethune-Cookman, and as soon as we get over there, I'm heading straight over to Fort Washington to get ready for the broadcast on the card. So keep watching the Facebook page and also the Boxing on Beltway Google app for Android page, as well as the iOS pages for Spreaker.com, Boxing on Beltway, and Boxing on Beltway on iHeartRadio.com. As soon as we go on the air, we will bring that whole card to you from Rosecroft Raceway in Fort Washington, Maryland. Now, this past weekend, this past Saturday, February 4th, Kobe Madison, the heavyweight out of Owings Mills, Maryland, he scored a first-round TKO over LaMarco Ellis of Wilson, North Carolina. The bout was held in Wilson, North Carolina at the Bill Ellis Convention Center, and got a chance to see some video from the card, and it didn't give us a time, but Madison basically battered Ellis, and Ellis came in weighing about 320 pounds, and Madison came in good size at 245 or so, and he just battered Ellis until Ellis just couldn't move anymore, and referee eventually stopped the contest. So Madison now 4-0, 3 KOs. Ellis is now 2-2, 1 KO. Just on a side note, And I've criticized what goes on in boxing in Wilson, North Carolina, as much as anybody. And there was an article about the card down there, and the card made an attempt to try to bring boxing to some level of prominence in North Carolina, and they brought in one of the great matchmakers and indeed a Hall of Famer, International Boxing Hall of Famer, and J. Russell Peltz from Philadelphia down there to do the matchmaking for the card. 6 of the 10 bouts on the card didn't make it past the first round. 2 of the bouts stopped after 2 rounds. And I think Peltz went in there with high expectations, trying to change the face of North Carolina boxing. I hope they do. Truly, I hope they do. But with little history I know about it, and not just the Wilson situation. See, I go back with North Carolina boxing all back to the 90s, to be perfectly honest with you. When my couple of last episodes of Boxing Spotlight we did actually were in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we did a couple of cards down there. We were asked to do some cards down there, video down there, and we went down there and did the shows at the Ritz nightclub in Raleigh. And this was another attempt to try to bring boxing in North Carolina to a good standing. And they had the heavy guns down there. The commissioner, the chair of the commission at that time was former world champion, heavyweight champion, James Bone Crusher Smith. One of the judges for the commission was one of the great super lightweights of all time. That's Billy Costello. And so they had heavy duty people down there, but and they had a couple good boxers down there too, but it just couldn't really get things going. So that was it. So if you go to Facebook and you see a article from the Wilson Times, that's the article about that situation, about that car down there. So that was there. As we said, February 11th, we're at Rosecroft Raceway. Don't forget Saturday, February the 18th, Lamont Peterson will be on Showtime, I believe it is, and he will take on David Avanyasin for Avanyasin's interim WBA interim welterweight championship. Marcus Brown will battle our own top dog Thomas Williams Jr. And according to my broadcast partner and writing partner Juan Marshall, Shingiz Khan Tazabai returns on this card, and he's going to be in there. That's from the Center Center in Cincinnati, Ohio, on the Adrian Broner card. And Tazabai will be on the undercard of that card as well. By the way, kudos to my partner Juan Marshall. He did an outstanding job today at Headbangers Gym. They had a media day for Lamont Peterson and a couple other people that are coming up in bouts, not only on that card, but he talked to Tariq Irby, who is going to be on the card on February 11th at Rosecroft Raceway in Fort Washington, Maryland. Talked to Anthony Peterson. I know a lot of people have asked me about what Anthony Peterson's status is and why he has not fought a lot of times since his only loss to Brandon Rios. That was like 3 or 4 years ago now. And Juan has a great interview with Anthony Peterson about that situation. So if you want to go to see those, you can go on to the Pro-Am Fight Talk YouTube page and see all the interviews from the media day that Juan Marshall conducted. I could not make it. I had to work, of course, so I couldn't make it. But I'm glad to see Juan made it and did a great job, as always, with the interviews and some of the pictures and some things that went on that media day today. So that is February the 18th. And, of course, February 25th in Birmingham, Alabama, you've got Jared Hurd taking on Tony Harrison. Also, Alantez Fox taking on, I've forgotten the guy's name. Alantez Fox, Kenneth McNeil, that's his name. Kenneth McNeil from Birmingham, Alabama. That's for the NABF middleweight championship. And also, Jared Hurd taking on Tony Harrison for the opportunity to fight the winner of, Jamel Charlo, possibly. That bout, by the way, has been added to the April 8th card that'll be held at the MGM National Harbor Casino. I'm sorry, no, that's wrong. That'll be on the March 11th card. That'll be at the MGM National Harbor Casino. Gary Russell Jr. against Oscar Escandón, and also Jamel Charlo will defend his title as well. And we have been told that Antonio Russell will be on the card, and the card will also mark the pro debut of Antoine Russell, the U.S. Olympian. So that'll be interesting as well. So that'd be 3 Gary Russells, 4 if you count Allen, who trains the brothers, and 5 if you count, of course, Gary Sr. And that'll be on March 11th from the MGM National Harbor Casino in Oxon Hill, Maryland, and that card will be on, that's a PBC card, and I believe it'll be on Showtime. Meanwhile, March 11th, big day, because not only do you have that particular bout, Gary Russell Jr. and Oscar Escandón, we also have a card, and this just came out over the last couple of days. We have 2 Beltway boxers, 2 boxers from Virginia, as a matter of fact, Northern Virginia, who will be on a card on Saturday, March 11th at the Sugar House Casino in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And this is another King's Promotions card. So Marshall Kaufman, King's Promotions, will be doing the card in Fort Washington, Maryland, Rosecroft Raceway, then doing this card in Philadelphia. And I think 3 days later, Kaufman has a card on March 14th in Reading, Pennsylvania, which is the home base for King's Promotions. Now, on this card on March 11th, the main event features the pride of Alexandria, Virginia, Brandon Quarles, and he'll return to action in what should be a very good 8-round middleweight contest. He'll take on Tyrone Young Gun Brunson out of Philadelphia. Now, Quarles is 18-3 with 1 draw and 9 KOs. He's coming off a 6-round unanimous decision over Marcos Primera, and that's a veteran to say the least, on June 25th in Greensboro, North Carolina. Now, Quarles has won 5 in a row, and he's shown a little bit more power in his last few bouts. And that should be interesting, and that'll be necessary going against Tyrone Brunson. Brunson is 23-6-2 with 22 KOs. Now, for those of you a few years ago, remember Tyrone Brunson, when he first broke into the business, he set a world record for the most consecutive first-round knockouts in a career. He started out with 19 first-round knockouts in his pro career. His first 19 bouts were all knockouts in the first round. He didn't have a unanimous decision until October 2009 when he won an 8-round unanimous decision against Marcos Primera, believe it or not. Then Brunson has really struggled since then. He has stepped up in class a little bit, and he hasn't done well. In his last 10 bouts, he has 3 wins, 6 losses, and a draw. So Brandon Quarles has a good opportunity to make a name for himself against a named boxer in Tyrone Brunson. Now, he may be a faded boxer, maybe, based on the record that he's had lately, but this is a very important bout for Brandon Quarles. If Quarles wants to have any shot of doing anything in the middleweight division, he has to win this bout. And it's going to be tough, considering he's fighting Brunson in Philadelphia, in Brunson's hometown. But if he can win this bout, this will do a lot of good for his career going forward. He's still a young guy, but he needs this win badly. So we'll see what happens there. That's the main event in that card. Brandon Quarles against Tyrone Brunson, 8 rounds in the main event. Now, one of the other bouts on the card meets another guy who desperately needs a win. And that is Juan de Xavier Rodriguez out of Haymarket, Virginia. He'll be in a super lightweight bout, against David Gonzalez of Philadelphia. That'll be a bout scheduled for 6 rounds. And Rodriguez, as I said, needs a win. He's 6-1, 5 KOs. He's lost 4 in a row. And he's coming off a tough loss to Michael Fox, where Rodriguez really just overmatched. I mean, Michael Fox fought an outstanding bout. This was at Rosecroft Raceway on November 5th. And we had that bout right here on the Box on Beltway Google app for Android. And Michael Fox was just dominant in that bout. Rodriguez, who's a lot shorter than Fox, had what most short boxers have against Fox, real trouble getting inside. And Fox just battered him en route to a 7th round TKO on that card. Gonzalez will be looking to bounce back from his first pro loss. He got knocked out in the first round by Samuel Tia on November 11th in Chester, Pennsylvania. So both guys looking for a big win here. But I tell you, if Juan Rodriguez can win that one, that will really kind of turn things around for him and really get him going. So we'll see what happens there. That is Saturday, March 11th at the Sugar House Casino in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Those two bouts will be on that card. Now, Saturday, March 18th. One of our prospects of the year for 2016. And it was interesting what's going on with the prospects already. You have Lamont Roach Jr., who already won a regional title, WBC regional title earlier this year. You have Mike Fox, who's headlining the card at Rose Park Raceway this Saturday on February 11th. And then on March 18th, the third of the prospects of the year, Travis Severe Reeves, the light heavyweight out of Baltimore, Maryland. He'll travel all the way to Queensland, Australia, and he will challenge Trent Broadhurst, who's from Queensland, for the IBF International Light Heavyweight Championship on Saturday, March the 18th. Eaton's Hill, it'll be in the Eaton's Hill Hotel in Eaton's Hill, Queensland, Australia. Now, as I said, Reeves was one of the Beltway prospects of the year. He's 13-2-2, 7 KOs. Had a great year last year as he won one state title and won one regional title. He defeated Larry Pryor by 8th round TKO on May 14th in Samoa, Maryland, because we had that bout on Box on Beltway Google app for Android. Great bout, won the Maryland State Cruiserweight title in that bout, but then he dropped down in weight to light heavy. And when he dropped down the weight, he faced Aaron Quattrochi, for the USBO light heavyweight title, and he's knocked out Quattrochi in a brutal second round knockout. That was on November 12th in Baltimore at the Burns Arena. And this is going to be an interesting bout for him because he's facing a guy, of course, in his home country, but a guy who's no stranger to regional title bouts himself. Trent Broadhurst is 20-1, 12 KOs. Hasn't fought a lot of quality people and fought most of his career. I think just about all of his career in Australia. He's won the WBA Oceania and the IBF Pan Pacific light heavyweight titles, and he captured the IBF International title with a 7th round technical decision over Rob Powdrill. That was in November 2015 in Mansfield, Australia, Queensland, Australia. Now he's coming off a 3rd round TKO over Nadir Hamdan on February 3rd. He last fought a few days ago in North Adelaide, Australia. And this will be his first defense of the international title that Broadhurst owns. So the other bouts were non-title bouts, and he hasn't fought tremendous competition either. So this could be a very interesting bout. You know, you go to these situations and you don't know a lot of these boxers from other countries, and for all we know, they could be blown up records, even though he's got a bunch of titles, Broadhurst does, to go along with this. But this would be a golden opportunity for Reeves to really put himself within the top 15 of the light heavyweight division in the IBF. And, he's done so well in his last few bouts, outstanding performances, getting better all the time. So this could be interesting to see what happens there. That'll be on Saturday, March 18th in Queensland, Australia. Travis Reeves going after the IBF International Light Heavyweight title on Saturday, March 18th. And then we know about a card that's coming to the Physical Activity Center on the campus of the University of the District of Columbia, UDC. This is a GQ card, GQ Promotions card, brand new promotional company, put together by Jerome Quigley, the undefeated boxer out of Montgomery Village, Maryland, and his manager, Jeff Gatling. And matchmaker there is Brian Dillon. He's put some pretty good people on there so far. Of course, Quigley's on there. We're hearing that Franchon Cruz will be on this card. And there's some other people that may be on this card. We can't tell you about them right now because they're not set yet. But if it all goes according to plan, there could be some serious star power on this card for March 25th, Saturday, March 25th at UDC, the University of the District of Columbia, the Physical Activity Center there for that card. So, and as we go into April, of course, April 8th is Vasil Lomachenko and Mike Sosa. Mike Reed will be on this card as well. And so we just have so much going on over the next few weeks in the Beltway that it's going to be really interesting to see. And hope you can support everything that goes on in this area because we're going to have a lot of fun. No question about that. We're going to have a lot of fun. So that's the boxing. Let me move to the wrestling real quick. And usually when I talk about wrestling, it's usually about a situation where a wrestler that came out of my childhood and into my teenage and into my young adult years has passed on. And I've had that a number of times. And actually, I do want to send my prayers out to one of the great villains of all time. That is the Russian bear, Ivan Koloff, who is suffering from liver cancer. He is battling liver cancer. Has been battling it for quite some time, but it seems to have advanced somewhat. So our prayers to Ivan Koloff. Of course, for those who don't know who Ivan Koloff is, my God, he set the wrestling world on his ear back in 1971 when he defeated and ended the 7.5-year reign for the Worldwide Wrestling Federation Championship of Bruno Sammartino in Madison Square Garden. And I know I talked to Koloff briefly about that night, and whoever talked about that night has always said that when Koloff pinned Sammartino that night, you could hear a pin drop in the Garden. 22,000 people, you could hear a pin drop that night after the match was over. But Ivan Koloff went on to win World Tag Team titles in the NWA, and it kind of connects me to the people I really did want to talk about, but I do want to send my best wishes to Ivan Koloff. But the people I wanted to talk about today and give tribute to are the two men who make up one of my all-time favorite tag teams in the wrestling business. Individually, they're known as Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson, and collectively for the last 30 years or so now, they have been the Rock and Roll Express. Now, those of you who follow Facebook already know this, but for those who don't, the Rock and Roll Express will be inducted, I should say, into the WWE Hall of Fame. Now, granted, the Express did not have a long run in WWE. They did make some appearances there, but they're being honored for their contributions to this business, which allowed some pretty good tag teams to come through the WWE. Most notably, Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, a.k.a. the Rockers, and prior to that known as the Midnight Rockers, when they were in the 808 territory. But the Rock and Roll Express, let me give a brief history of the Rock and Roll Express. Rock and Roll Express really started in the mid-'80s, in 1983 to be exact, and they started down in Memphis, Tennessee, and they were put together by the guy I gotta think may induct them, even though he'll be emceeing the Hall of Fame event as he usually does. That's Jerry the King Lawler. Jerry the King Lawler and the promoter in Memphis at the time, Jerry Jarrett, really put together the Rock and Roll Express. It kind of came up. Actually, Ricky and Robert kind of came up with the name, and Jerry didn't want to use it. Okay. Now let me backtrack just a little bit. I'd actually seen Rick Morton wrestle in the Southwest territory in San Antonio, Texas. That's Joe Blanchard territory. Joe Blanchard was is the father, actually was. He's passed on, but he was the father of Tully Blanchard, one of the great wrestlers of all time. And Rick was used to wrestle there with a guy by the name of Ken Lucas, and they had won the Southwest Tag Team titles and used to battle Tully Blanchard and Gino Hernandez, late Gino Hernandez, for that Southwest title. And also, there was another team down there, not the Medics. I forgot who. There was another team down there that also would challenge for the Southwest titles. But anyway, when Ricky got to Memphis and then Robert went to Memphis, Robert was teaming with his older brother, Rick Gibson, in Florida, down in Pensacola, where he is from. And Rick is a second-generation wrestler. His father, Paul Morton, was not only a wrestler, but also a great referee in the Southwest territory for many years. So Ricky and Robert get to Memphis, and they form the Rock and Roll Express. And they were really sort of the backup team, or the B team, to another very popular tag team in Memphis at the time, Steve Keirn and Stan Lane, better known as the Fabulous Ones. The Fabulous Ones were an offshoot of the legendary Memphis wrestler Jackie Fargo, who's one of the Fabulous Fargos tag team. And the Fabulous Ones adopted the Fargo style. They adopted the top hat and tails, the strut, and a lot of those situations. So they were the number one team in Memphis. The Rock and Roll Express were the number two team in Memphis. And everywhere the Fab Ones weren't, the Rock and Roll Express were. And they were growing, following in Memphis and all. And then suddenly they finally went, they next went to the Mid-South territory, which is Louisiana, Oklahoma, in that area. And that's where they caught fire. A lot of things happened down there. Number one, they had a great promoter, Bill Watts, who ran the Mid-South territory, later become UWF. You had a great announcer team, including Jim Ross, that's where people first saw and heard Jim Ross, who was a WWE Hall of Famer, and and many people consider the greatest wrestling announcer of all time. I think it's a close number two, and even he would say a close number two behind the legendary Gordon Soley. So Ricky and Robert get to Louisiana, and they set that place on fire. And the third thing that happened down there was they had great opposition in the form of a tag team known as the Midnight Express and a manager by the name of Jim Cornette. Now, Jim Cornette would probably induct the Rock and Roll, except he's not on the best of terms with WWE right now, but that's another story for another time. But Rock and Roll Express and the Midnight Express, the version of Dennis Condrey and Bobby Eaton, Loverboy Dennis and Beautiful Bobby, they would have tremendous matches in the Mid-South territory, and they traded the tag team titles down there for many years. Also, another team that was coming in that area was Ted DiBiase and Dr. Death Steve Williams, and they wrestled the Rock and Roll a few times down there as well. Finally, in all this time, I'm reading about the Rock and Roll in the magazines, Wrestling, Inside Wrestling, Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and all the other magazines that were around that time. And so I never seen them in person or never seen them on television because we didn't get Mid-South television at that time. Finally, though, in 1985, the Rock and Roll Express make their way to the Crockett territory, which is known as the Mid-Atlantic territory, which was Virginia and the Carolinas. And the first match on television was a matchup for the NWA World Tag Team titles against Ivan Koloff and Crusher Khrushchev. And it was held in Shelley, North Carolina, in a building that they said was the hottest building they'd ever been in. It was completely hot, and you could see it on television. You could see them on television, and everybody's just sweating profusely. Well, the Rock and Roll Express win the world title, and that just sets everything in motion. They would just set the territory on fire. The Midnight Express would come into the area, and they would put on some tremendous events. Oh, goodness, just amazing. And then in around 1986 or 87, Dennis Condrey comes out of the Midnight Express, and Stan Lane from the Fabulous Ones comes into the Midnight Express. And the match is just elevated. And I remember in particular, one night, July the 2nd, 1988, at the old Capitol Center, the Great American Bash, to this day, the greatest pro wrestling card I've ever attended in my entire life. The main event of that card was a steel cage tag team match between the Four Horsemen, which at that time was Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, and Lex Luger, of course, their manager, J.J. Dillon, against the Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal with Precious Paul Ellering, and the team known as the Superpowers, Dusty Rhodes and Nikita Koloff. And that was the main event. But the bout that stole the show that night was the Rock and Roll Express against Eaton and Lane, the Midnight Express, for the Rock and Roll Express's World Tag Team title. We almost thought we saw a title change that night. And 20,000 people went berserk when Jim Cornette's bodyguard, Big Bubba, came in and interfered, and the referee didn't see it, and the referee counted out I think it was Rick Morton and the Midnight Express team won the title. But if you remember the Cap Center, for those who've never been to the Cap Center, USA Arena, whatever, they had the telescreen. They were one of the first arenas in the country to have the telescreen. Telescreen, they called it. And the outside referee in the locker room or in the dressing room area saw it on the telescreen and reversed the decision. But it was an incredible match from beginning to end. The Rock and Roll Express were going to win 4 World Tag Team titles in the Crockett territory. They beat the Midnight Express a couple of times. They beat Rick Rude and Manny Fernandez. And, of course, they beat Ivan Koloff and Crusher Khrushchev to win the title for the very first time. They would eventually move on to the AWA territory for a while. Jim Cornette put together a territory in West Virginia called Smoky Mountain Wrestling. And not only did they face the Midnight Express, but they also faced the team of Tom Pritchard and Stan Lane. And Bobby Eaton would kind of help out every now and again. But Tom Pritchard and Stan Lane, and also Tom Pritchard and Jimmy Del Rey, they were known as the Heavenly Bodies. And they would team up against the Rock and Roll Express there. And the rest is, all of it is history. The Rock and Roll Express to this day still do independence. Every now and then they show up on television. They showed up on television recently on Impact Wrestling as part of the Total Nonstop Deletion telecast that the Hardy Boys, now known as Broken Matt Hardy and brother Nero, Jeff Hardy, had a couple weeks ago on the Pop Network. So they're still very viable. They're not what they once were, but they still draw the crowds, and nostalgia hits people. I had the pleasure of seeing them a couple of times live, other than the 88 event. And in 2011, I had the opportunity to meet them in person, and it was an amazing moment. It was a short time, but I remember telling Robert that it was so cool when they came to DC and wrestled there, and Robert just looked at me and said, we rocked and rolled down there, didn't we? So I mean, it's such a wonderful situation because a lot of tag teams, starting with the Midnight Rockers, who wanted to be the Rock and Roll Express, really. And when you look at tag teams like the Fantastics, who were kind of a combination of both, more like the Fabulous Ones than the Rock and Roll was still there. And again, the Midnight Rockers with Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty. A lot of these quick tag teams, they helped make tag team wrestling an art form. And I remember reading one time they listed tag teams, and I read a description saying that Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson were the most precise tag team in the business. And I would definitely agree with that. I mean, the double drop kick, still a thing of beauty even to this day. They still do it. That was their finishing move. And it was just watching them was just a lot of fun. And it was great to see. And I put them right up there in my favorite top 5. These aren't the best. I mean, these are my top 5. My top 5 and that I saw in wrestling over the years. I don't have them in any order, but I start with Rick Martel and Tony Gurria because they were the first really big tag team that I really loved. I mean, I loved those teams like Ivan Putski and Tito Santana prior to that, even Tony Atlas and Rocky Johnson, who didn't stay a team very long. But I just loved Gurria and Martel and the way they worked. And Tony Gurria, and I actually asked him about this. I asked him on Twitter about this, why he's not in the Hall of Fame. The definition of tag team specialist is Tony Gurria because he won the WWE tag team title, WWF, World Wrestling Federation, whatever, tag team title 5 times with 4 different partners. And you talk about totally different partners. He went from Haystacks Calhoun, who was 601 pounds, to Dean Ho, who was an Asian star, pre-Ricky Steamboat. And from Dean Ho to Larry Zbyszko, who was a great wrestler. He's now in the Hall of Fame. And went from Larry Zbyszko to Rick Martel twice. And Rick Martel was extremely young back then, and he had just lost his brother. His brother had died in the ring. Michelle Martel had died in the ring. And Rick Martel would tell you that Gurria was the big brother that he needed that time. And they were a great tag team as well. So it starts with them for me personally. Rock and Roll Express is there. the Midnight Express, Eaton and Lane version, are there. Then, of course, the Road Warriors and the British Bulldogs. And those are my top 5 tag teams of all time. And again, Gurria and Martel, kind of like San Martino, for me, very sentimental choice. But I'm just so happy to see the Rock and Roll Express get their due. And they're still going strong, still rocking and rolling. And it's just great to see that. So I just wanted to send that tribute out to them because that's going to be fun. And as soon as we finish this podcast, I'm going to watch a DVD that I have on them about their history. I'm going to watch that as soon as we finish up here. So I just want you I'm glad you begrudged me that. And they were just great. So congratulations to the Rock and Roll Express. And that will do it here for our News and Notes podcast. The Boxing on Beltway News and Notes podcast brought to you by Real Time Pain Relief. For boxers to ballerinas, from shoulder pain to muscle strain, everything in between, Boxing Along the Beltway recommends Real Time Pain Relief, the natural, plant-based, safe, fast, and effective ointment. And if you go to www.freepainoffer.com, buy $10 worth of Real Time Pain Relief, you'll get a free $10 tube of Real Time. Rub it on, the pain is gone in real time. We'll talk to you this Saturday, February 11th, from Rosecroft Raceway in Fort Washington, Maryland, for live broadcast of the King's Motions card. And we look forward to seeing you at a Beltway boxing card near you. Until then, I'm Gary Digit Williams saying so long, everybody, and always remember to keep supporting the best boxing in the world, the boxing along the Beltway. Take care.